Hey guys.
Hi, Miss. Good evening.
Hi, good evening. Please don't forget your camera before we get started. And let's see. Okay, guys. So today we'll get started with a new section. So we'll be looking at the writing section now. The writing section is a production section, which means that you get to produce a response. You're gonna write some essays in here. And I think it's a good thing because it's quite more flexible than other sections. Let's say the reading or the listening. It's not so black and white. So it's pretty great because you can, even if you're not an advanced student, I would say you can try to get a better score here. So the writing section lasts 50 minutes total. You're gonna have to write 2 essays. It has 2 tasks. The first one lasts 20 minutes and the second one 30. 2 tasks, 50 minutes total, and it's over 30, as all of the other sections. So as I was saying, you get 2 tasks in here. One of them, the first one, is an integrated task. You're gonna have to write an essay, but it's an integrated task because it means that you have to summarize something. You have to summarize certain content that they give you. Now, the second task is gonna be independent, which means that you're not gonna have to summarize anything. Instead, you're gonna have to give your opinion on a topic. So that is the difference between integrated and independent. All right, and today we'll start with the first integrated task. So any questions before we get started with that? Okay, guys. So here's the integrated writing. So what you will have to do here is first, you will have to read a passage, right? You will have to read a short passage. You're gonna be given 3 minutes to read. And the passage is something like this, something this long. It's not that long, and I would say 3 minutes is enough. So first you read the passage for 3 minutes. Then after the 3 minutes are over, you're gonna have to listen to a lecture. So you listen to the lecture, which lasts like 2 or 3 minutes again. And finally, you get the question, which is gonna ask you to summarize both, to summarize the passage and the lecture. So you're gonna have 20 minutes exactly to write your essay where you summarize both the reading, aka the passage, and the lecture. Okay, guys? So is it okay so far, the structure, what you have to do? You read, you listen to the lecture, and then you write your essay in 20 minutes. Any questions so far? Okay. So let's see what this is about. We're gonna be looking at the structure of each one. So this is an example of a reading passage. It's an article or a reading passage. As you can see, it has 4 paragraphs. It has an introduction, which is the first paragraph in yellow, and it has 3 body paragraphs, which are the body of the article, right? These 3 ones here. These are the body paragraphs. It doesn't have a conclusion, which is great because it means that you don't necessarily have to write a conclusion when you're writing. Now, I want to start by saying that this is an argumentative text, okay? So that means that the author of this text, the author of this article, is trying to convince or persuade the reader of something, of his opinion on the topic. So he has an idea, he has an opinion on a certain topic, tries to persuade or to convince you guys of that opinion, of that idea. So he's gonna provide some evidence, some reasons, justifying what he's saying, what his opinion is. Okay, so that's how this works. Now, what you need to find here in the introduction, you will have what is called the thesis statement. So does anyone know what a thesis statement is?
Like the main idea of the lecture, or what it will be about.
Yes, yeah, sort of. That's right. So it is the main idea. Maybe I would say the main claim or the author's opinion or the author's idea. So yes, you're right. So let's say, I don't know, the topic is technology. So the author has an opinion on technology. Maybe the author is in favor of technology and is saying technology is the best thing that has ever happened to us. And that will be the thesis statement. That's his main claim, his opinion on the topic. Or maybe he's saying, okay, so I think we need to adapt to technology changes. So that is his claim, right? And then he's going to tell you why, giving you some reasons. So that is what you will have in the introduction. And that's what you need to find. You need to look for that idea, that claim, the author's opinion. Okay? So for example, I could say a claim could be people are better than animals. Okay, maybe I can say that, and that's going to be my claim, my thesis statement. And I'm going to have that in the introduction, in the first part. Now, in the body paragraphs, this one here, the three ones, you will have three arguments, argument 1, argument 2, and argument 3, or 3 reasons, if you want to see it that way, justifying the thesis statement. So they're going to try to prove what the author is saying in the introduction. So if the author is saying that technology is the best thing that ever happened to us, maybe in the first reason he's going to say, so the first thing is because technology gives us tools. So that's the first reason. It gives us a lot of tools to work, for example, in the pandemic. I don't know. The second thing may be that technology makes us more creative. So that's the second reason that the author gives. And the third thing could be that technology, I don't know, that technology helps us solve problems. All right, so that could be his third reason. So that's what you will have. 3 reasons or 3 ideas justifying, backing up, or supporting the thesis statement. So in my example, if I say people are better than animals, I could say first, because we are more empathetic creatures. Second, because we have more rational capacities. And third, because we have evolved more. All right, so maybe I can say that. It's just an example, but that's the way it's going to be. So you have in the introduction, the main claim, and then you have 3 arguments or 3 ideas supporting that claim. Okay? So does it make sense? Do you guys know what I mean here? Anything that's not so clear? Any questions? Okay. Now, when you read, you're allowed to take some notes. You can take some notes if you want. You will have 3 minutes, right? You will see that I would say it's enough. And the good thing is that you don't have to memorize. You don't even have to take notes because it'll be there. It's not going to go anywhere. After the 3 minutes are up, it's going to remain on your screen. You will still have access to it even when you're writing the essay. So this is how your screen will look like on the day of the test. So on the top, on the bottom of the page, you will have the question. On the left side, you will have the reading, what we just read. And on the right side, you're going to have to type your response. So you're going to write your essay here. Okay? So as you can see, the reading will not go anywhere. It will stay there throughout your response. So you don't have to memorize or copy, or you don't have to, you don't have to take notes or anything. You could even copy and paste when you're writing, you know, but of course you won't have, it's better if you don't do that. But what I'm saying is, don't worry too much about understanding every single thing. The best thing you can do when you're reading is try to catch the main idea, try to understand the overall picture, what the author's opinion is, and what the reasons he gives are. So is that okay? Any questions now?
I have one question. When we are summarizing the reading part, you say that sometimes we can copy and paste, but at the same time, it's not mandatory that we have to change and put in our words, trying to find synonyms to summarize this.
Okay, that's a great question. So yes, we're going to talk about that, some things that you should and you shouldn't do in the writing. But for now, what I can say is, of course, there's no such a thing as mandatory. So you are allowed to copy and paste. You can just copy and paste and say like, okay, altruism is a type of behavior. You can even quote if you want and cite, but it is not advisable to do that. So if you want my suggestion, and I would say anybody's suggestion, is always better if you use your own language, your own vocabulary, your own words. So you basically have to paraphrase everything you're going to extract from the reading. Because one part of the rubric, by the way, is vocabulary and word choice. So they want to see how extensive your vocabulary is. And if you just copy and paste, then you're not showing them that. So it's obviously going to hurt your score.
Okay, thank you.
So we will talk about that. We will talk about the rubric, how they evaluate your score, what you have and don't have to do. Right now, let's focus on what the lecture looks like. So after you're done reading, you will listen to the lecture, right? You will listen to it because lecture, remember, is spoken. So you have to listen to it, hear it. But for now, this is an example of a lecture, okay? It's the transcript of a lecture so that you can see how, you can visualize how it is. So as you can see, the structure of the lecture is going to be exactly the same as the structure of the reading was. The only difference is that it's not going to be written anymore. You won't be able to read it, but you will listen to it. So you will have a short introduction, the yellow part, in which the professor will have the main claim, and then you will have 3 reasons in the body of the lecture. So it's exactly the same. The only difference is that obviously you won't read it, but you can pay attention to these transitions. Like first off, to introduce the first point, second point, the second one, and third, you can have other transitions, you know, like to start, now let's look at, moreover, finally. So pay attention to those transitions. Those are like red flags that help you identify where or how the structure of the lecture is. But the structure will be the same. Now, in terms of content, what you will have in the lecture, what you will listen in the lecture, is going to be the exact opposite of what you had in the reading. So let's say in the introduction, we were saying that the claim is that people are better than animals. Okay? So people better than animals. So in the lecture, the professor will object that and will say the exact opposite thing. So we'll say, no, I think the author of this article is wrong. Animals are better, or people are not better than animals. Okay? So the lecture is going to oppose whatever the author said. It's going to be the opposite. It's going to object. And the same goes for the arguments. If the first argument is that we have more empathy, or we're able to feel empathy, then the lecture will say something about that, something about empathy as well. If, I don't know, if the second argument or the second idea is about evolution, then the lecture will say the same. Only the other way around, right? So everything you have in the lecture is going to be objecting what you read in the article. So it's pretty predictable, I would say. And that's why I say, if you understand, if you catch these ideas, if you know what the reading is about, then you will have no problem understanding the lesson. It will be easier for you. Okay, so try to read carefully, understand the main idea, and then look for the arguments that respond to those ideas, because that's what you will have in the lecture. An objection of whatever you had in the reading. It's always like that. Is that okay now? Any questions as for what the lecture is like? Okay. So, all right. In your response, although we will talk about this in a bit, but just to let you know, so in your response, you're just gonna have to contrast both information. First thing, you don't have to give your opinion at all. You can never use the pronoun I and tell me what you think or what you know about the topic. So you cannot give your opinion. And you're just gonna have to contrast all the information that you have. So basically you're gonna be like, all right, so the reading says that people are better than animals, but the lecture says that they're not. Then again, the reading says that people are more empathetic, but the lecture says that we're not. So you're just gonna be like that, contrasting all the information you have. Of course, you're gonna use synonyms, you're gonna use different transitions. I'm gonna give you a template, but you know, that is actually how it's gonna be. You're just gonna contrast all the information that you have. Now, before we take a look at the example, I'm gonna give you some tips. So first thing, you're gonna have to continue reporting the way we did, right? The way we were doing the last task in the speaking section, because these are not your ideas. And they need to be reporting verbs in the simple present. You can maybe check out some. I'm gonna give you some myself. The second thing is that you don't have to quote because vocabulary is part of the rubric. If for any, I don't know, for anything happens that you cannot listen to the lecture, sometimes, you know, there has been some cases in which the lecture didn't play or something, especially if you're taking it at home or something, or if you just didn't understand what the lecture was about, then your contingency plan is just to think or imagine what the opposite of the reading could be and try to work with that. But that's only in an emergency scenario, in case you have no idea what the lecture was about. Maybe when you're reading, you can try to paraphrase as you go so that you can start thinking of some synonyms to use, some other ways to express the same. And finally, I'm sure that you guys were planning on asking me this, which is, how many words am I supposed to have in my essay? Now, there's no word limit here or word requirement. That means that they're not gonna stop reading your essay if you go over a certain number of words, or that they won't read it if you don't have a certain number of words. Ideally, according to the ETS, you should write about 200 to 250 words for this essay, but it doesn't really matter, I would say. If you want my opinion, I would say it's not really about the number of words that you write, but it's about how well written they are. So you can have a 150 word essay. Maybe you don't make it in time to write the entire 250, and it can be a great essay, or you can have an 800 word essay and be a total mess. So don't worry too much. Don't ever count the words. Believe it or not, a lot of people are like counting the words. Okay, I have 1, 2, 3, 50 here. I'm gonna write 200 more. Don't do it. If you really want to make sure that you have enough information, or enough information in your essay, what you can do instead is count the paragraphs. So you should have at least 4 paragraphs in your essay, and each paragraph should be at least 4 lines each. Okay, it could be more. You can have 4 or 5 paragraphs if you add a conclusion, and your paragraphs can be longer, 4 to 6 maybe. But the minimum is 4 paragraphs, 4 lines each, and that should be about 200 words. Okay, so those are some tips I can give you. Any questions now? Okay. All right, so I also wanted to say, before we take a look at the example, as for the rubric goes, you can find the rubric of the speaking and writing in the ATS website. So, but I'm gonna give you a summary of the rubric of how they score your essay, okay? I'm gonna maybe send you this as well so that you can have it if you want. But basically what they're looking for is three things, all right? Three categories. So the first one has to do with content, which means two things: how accurate your information is. So accuracy, you know that you're summarizing, right? So if you have inaccurate information, so if you're talking about or saying something that wasn't said in the reading or lecture, if you are misleading the reader, that means that it's an inaccurate essay, right? So you're not really summarizing it correctly. You're saying something different. That is accuracy. And relevance. So how relevant is the information that you're presenting? So for example, if you're talking about these minor details instead of what's really important, then it's really irrelevant information. They also look at grammar and delivery, which means, so not only does it mean to have your, correct grammar, you're actually allowed to make some grammar mistakes. It's fine, it's almost inevitable. You can, as long as you're not repeating the same mistakes all over again and you're showing that you're actually struggling with a specific grammar point, it shouldn't affect your score that much. So you can make some grammar mistakes, but you also need to make sure that you're showing some grammar variety. And I'm gonna give you tips about this, how to show grammar variety. That means using different types of sentences, using maybe different tenses, maybe different sorts of structures and stuff. And also vocabulary and word choice. So vocabulary means how many words you're writing, so how extensive your vocabulary is, if it's an advanced vocabulary or a basic one, And word choice means how appropriate the words you're using are. So that has to do with, using the right words. So if it's business, instead of saying people, you're saying consumers, so it's more appropriate. And finally, they're looking at order and organization, so structure and organization, which has to do with how ordered everything is, right? So, or organize your essays. So if you're not mixing up ideas, so if in a paragraph you're talking about one thing and another thing that are not really related, if you're using transitions to help smoothen the transition between ideas. So those are the three things that they want from you, okay? Any questions about this? And also, if it's relevant, I'm sorry, if you're not being redundant. Okay. So now we can take a look at the example. We're gonna listen to the lecture, and we're gonna try to write the essay. We have, by the way, half more class to work on this task. So if we don't make it in time, we'll just continue where we left next class, okay? But let's take a look. So here's the reading, here's the article. You guys will have 3 minutes to read it the way that you would in the test. Please read it on your own, and then we'll discuss what this is about, okay? Okay. So time's up. So first thing, could anybody tell me what the topic is? So what is this article about?
It's about the advantages of driverless cars.
Good, perfect, that's right. So it's about the advantages of driverless cars. Now, what is the thesis statement? What is the author's opinion on driverless cars? We need a claim, right, and a statement. So
The positive impact on driving experience.
yeah, that these cars will have a positive impact on our driving experience. You're right. Perfect. So as you can see, there's a difference, right? Because when you say the topic, it's not exactly a sentence. It's not a clause, right? The advantages of driverless cars or the positive impact of driverless cars. But when you want a claim or a thesis statement, then it has the form of a clause. So it has a subject and verb and a complement, right? So driverless cars will have a positive impact. Because, and I'm saying this because this is what you will need to use. And many people make that mistake. You know, they're gonna write the reading claims the advantages of driverless cars. But when you use a reporting verb like claim, state, mentions, describes, or talks about, then you need to have a clause, a complete clause. Okay, guys. That's perfect then. So according to the author, driverless cars will have a positive impact. Now, can you tell me why? What's the first reason he gives? What's the first idea here in the first body paragraph?
Well, the reading states that most of the accidents in the United States are caused by humans. So that's the principal reason of why they think that the driverless cars are better, because the software like is specialized to not make the mistakes of humans.
Okay, that's great, Madeline. Thank you. So yes, you're right. So he mentions that most accidents are caused by humans, and according to him, these cars are not capable of making those mistakes that we do. So therefore, the bottom line is that they are safer, right? They will be much safer. Keep the keyword. Okay. So because they're not capable of making mistakes, we can also write that down or highlight that part. Okay. Now, what about the second idea? Why else are they going to have this positive impact?
These types of cars are good for the environment because nowadays drivers stop their engines, and when they start them again because of the traffic, the pollution increases. So in this case, driverless cars will be better because they will be faster and they will start their engines less than a normal car.
Okay, that's awesome, Valeria, amazing, great. You're right. So yes, according to him, they're good for the environment. They don't stop and start again like usual cars do. And also that means they drive more efficiently, and therefore they're more environmentally friendly. They're better for the environment than normal cars. And finally, what is the last reason he gives here in the last party paragraph?
Sorry, Miss. Before that, in the third paragraph, probably it is possible to add that these cars will reduce traffic problems.
Yes, yeah, sure. So yeah, I think that's important as well. They will reduce traffic problems, which apparently is good for the environment. Okay. Nice. So what about the last one? What would you guys say?
Maybe these autonomous cars give passengers time.
Yes, that's right. They will give passengers time. Perfect. And so we can focus on other stuff. We can, instead of driving, we can do other things that we have to do. So that's great, you guys. As you can see, you have the claim, which is that they will have a positive impact. And you have the 3 reasons or the 3 arguments. They're safer, good for the environment, and they give us time. And those are the most important points. And as long as you get that, then it's going to be a lot easier for you to get the lecture. One more thing that could be important that you can take into account when writing your essay is examples. So examples are going to be all those, all that information that is specific, right? So for example, here they're talking about cars in general. So they are safer, they don't make mistakes, etc. But when they start talking about one specific car or one specific company that has this specific car that drove this specific amount of miles, then that's an example. Now, do we have any other examples here in the reading?
I don't know if in the 3rd paragraph, because the 3rd paragraph talk about the environment, right? So because of the traffic problems, it produce pollution. So I don't know if this can be an example.
Okay, I would say that's just a fact, right? So
Okay.
here is a fact. Yes, they're saying this is how usual cars work. They pollute a lot. So yeah, I wouldn't say it's an example.
Maybe in the last paragraph, in the part that says the average time of communicating to and from work in the United States is about 30 minutes each way.
Okay, so yes, that could be an example. Yeah, for sure. So they're saying, in general, it takes up a lot of our time when we drive. So for example, from commuting to work, to and from work, is about 30 minutes. So yes, that could be an example.
And in the 3rd paragraph, the example could be typical journey within a city. Drivers deal with urban traffic by stopping and starting their engines repeatedly.
Okay, yeah, sure. That's perfect. That's an example as well. So they're just saying they drive more efficiently when they get specific about how, so what things they deal with. So yes, that could be an example. And maybe the last one as well, these activities, right? They say we can focus on other things, generally speaking, and when they get specific about what things we can focus on, those are examples. So we can, for instance, read or watch videos, catch up on work, whatever it is. So those are some important or relevant ideas that we can extract from here. Remember, it's important that you need to summarize. You only get 20 minutes to write, and it will be, you don't have to use every single piece of information that you have here. So you need to summarize and understand what would be more important. So now that we've done this, any questions so far about what you need to do when you're reading? Okay. Now we're going to listen to the lecture. Please take some notes and look for those ideas that respond to these ideas. So you need to understand what the professor thinks of driverless cars in the introduction, what he thinks about the safety of them. So are they really safer? Are they really good for the environment? Will they actually give us time? So I'm going to play the lecture for you guys.
Now listen to part of a lecture on the same topic you just read about. A lot of people are very excited about driverless cars, but most of the media attention and praise ignores the problems of driverless cars. The author seems to believe that autonomous cars will cure all of our driving troubles, when nothing could be further from the truth. Take the idea that driverless cars will be safer. Remember, all computer software is designed by humans, so any type of automatic guidance system within driverless cars will be prone to error. For example, the driverless car mentioned by the author, the one that drove over 700,000 miles without an accident, actually hit another car just last month. It was all over the news because it makes everyone doubt just how safe driverless cars actually are. And what about the idea that driverless cars will reduce pollution? Well, some studies suggest that more people will begin to drive once driverless cars become available. Since people will no longer need a driver's license to get behind the wheel, age restrictions for both young and old will no longer matter. More people will be on the road, and it will increase the amount of cars. Pollution levels may actually increase with driverless cars, even if they drive in a more fuel-efficient manner. As for the extra time the driverless cars are supposed to give us, well, that may be such a benefit after all. You see, most people nowadays find driving relaxing. They enjoy driving their car while listening to music or talk radio. It's a welcome distraction from the usual routine. Once people start to use driverless cars, it becomes another space to do work or watch videos, which is how most people already spend most of their day. I'm afraid that this extra time in driverless cars will just be another way to work or waste time. Now, answer the question. Summarize the points made in the lecture, being sure to explain how they cast doubt on the specific points made in the reading passage. You have 20 minutes to write.
Okay. So let's quickly talk about what the lecture was about before we write. We have to at least get the introduction done. So tell me, what is the author's, well, not the author, sorry, the professor's opinion on driverless cars? What's the claim?
The use of driverless cars brings a lot of problems.
Yes, that's right. So it brings a lot of problems that we're not really, well, that some people are not really considering. Maybe there are more shortcomings than there are benefits. Now, what about the first idea on safety? Are they actually safer than normal cars?
They are not, because the software is made by humans.
Okay. Anything else you guys would like to add?
He mentioned an example of a driverless car that hit last month. So people get worried about it.
Good. And if I'm not wrong, I think it was the same example that the author talks about. So yes, they're not that safe because, well, even if, well, we are the ones that design the software, or humans are the ones that design the software, which means that we are capable of making mistakes. So we could make a mistake when designing it. So they are actually prone to error. And we have the example of that car. What about the second idea on the environment?
That more people will drive, so there will be more people around the road.
Okay, and what does that mean?
More cars or more pollution.
Good. So at the end of the day, even if they drive more efficiently, more people are going to be driving because you don't have restrictions anymore. So that means more cars, more pollution. And finally, what about the argument on time? Isn't it a good thing that they give us time?
The professor says that driving could be relaxing for some people, and if they couldn't driving and they read or work, it could be a waste of time, or they couldn't have a time for relaxing in their routine.
Okay, that's perfect. And that's true. So yeah, some people like driving, they enjoy driving and it's a relaxing time for them. And if they don't drive, they're just gonna use that time to do what they already do, which is probably just wasted. Okay, guys. Any questions on the part of the lecture? Okay. Now the question is always going to be the same. Summarize the points made in the lecture, being sure to explain how they cast doubt on the points provided or made in the reading. Which means summarize everything, making sure that you contrast the info that you have. So here's what we're going to do. This is a template that I got for you guys. As you can see, it might look like a bit repetitive. It does. It is, you know, the structure is going to be the same for each single paragraph. You're going to be the reading claims, however, the professor argues. The article starts by stating that, nevertheless, in the presentation, it's noted that. So every single paragraph will have the same structure. But it's okay, you know, and that's the thing. A mistake that some people make is they think that this is sort of a creative essay, and it's not, right? You don't have to worry about making or writing a fun, exciting, interesting essay. You don't have to really call the reader's attention or anything. So it's okay if the structure is the same for each paragraph. Remember, you're just trying to show that you know how to effectively communicate in English, how to effectively write, that you have achieved a certain grammar level, that you have understood the content that you've been given, that you're able to summarize it well, to present relevant information, to use different vocabulary. So it doesn't matter if the structure is the same. Of course, we're gonna do some things. I'm gonna be giving you guys some tips next class on how to make it a bit different, a bit better, level it up a bit, how to show that grammar that I was telling you about, maybe that vocabulary as well. So I'm going to be giving you some tips. But the thing is, you can use this structure, you can use this template, and still have even a perfect score. So don't worry too much. Don't try to make it so different, so interesting, because you don't have that much time. And this is the usual structure of any informative essay. Okay. So let's start with the introduction. Okay, let's try to get this. So in the introduction, the basic thing, the most basic thing that you guys need to have is, of course, you need to present both claims, which is summarize what the author and the professor's opinions are. Now that's the basic thing. If you want to do a little bit more, maybe at the end, when you're done writing your essay, you can go back and add some more things. So you can provide a bit of context at the beginning and then have a transitional phrase as well, which is part of the claims. So we're going to see how this is. So first thing, when I say the first sentence give context, I mean you need to talk about the topic in general without including any opinion, any position, anything like that. So you're going to get this from the reading. I don't know if you guys noticed, but in the reading, most of the time, you have a little bit of context, right? In the introduction, you have a description of what the topic is, maybe an explanation, maybe an example. You always do. So for example, here we have the definition of self-driving cars and how they work, right? We have the technology is simple to understand. Using sensors on computers, these cars can drive without input from a human. That is the definition of driverless cars, right? Cars that can drive without input from a human. So maybe you can take advantage of that definition and use it to give a bit of context. So you can say something like, the article and lecture both discuss or are both on, and then you tell me the general topic, you know, driverless cars. And then you can explain a bit of how they work, how they are, what they are. So maybe you can, I don't know, between dashes, say something like, paraphrase the definition, right? So cars that can drive without input from a human. How would you guys paraphrase that idea? cars that can drive without input from a human. How would you define driverless cars in different words? What could you say? Anyone?
Doesn't need to be manipulated by a human.
Okay, sure. So driverless cars, maybe vehicles that don't need to be, or that do not need to be manipulated by humans. Okay, that's great. So there you have the definition. As you can see, guys, here I'm using, these are supposed to be dashes. You don't have dashes here in my keyboard, but I'm gonna talk about those. I'm gonna talk about punctuation in general, which is something important as well. So next class, when I give you the tips, I'll tell you, what things you could use, what things you can add to show that. But for now, right now, I'm just explaining a bit of what these driverless cars are, vehicles that do not need to be manipulated by humans. And maybe you could say, both discuss the impact of driverless cars, right? Which are vehicles that do not need to be. Now, then, after you have given some context about what the topic is in general, for both the article and lecture, you need to state their opinion, the professor's and author's opinion. So both claims. You can say something like, the reading extract claims that, and here you just tell me the claim, right? So the reading extract claims that these cars will have a positive impact on our driving experience. But don't copy and paste, you need to paraphrase it. So what could you say instead? Any thoughts?
That it will be a benefit in our driving experience.
Okay, yes, we could say something like that, sure. That they, or maybe this technology, will be, instead of a benefit, maybe beneficial, right? Because we're describing it, and that's beneficial for our driving experience. Or for society, for us, whatever. Okay. And provides 3 arguments of support. Now, as you can see here, I'm gonna probably put it in bold, the parts of the template. So as you can see, I'm using this transitional phrase and provides 3 arguments of support. I'm not summarizing the arguments. Try not to do that, please. Try not to summarize them and not be like, I don't know, because they are safer, good for the environment, and give us time. Because if you do that, then it may, it's more likely that you sound more repetitive when you are explaining them in your body paragraphs. And in case you have extra time and want to do a conclusion, you won't have much to say in the conclusion. So try not to summarize the arguments. Try just to say something like, provides 3 arguments of support. And then you say, however, the professor argues that, and here you need to paraphrase the professor's opinion. So what could you say? Here we have something about the use of driverless cars bring a lot of problems. Maybe we can put that down. So that the use of such cars bring a lot of problems. I'm gonna give you more tips, by the way. So for example, one thing is careful with the tenses, okay? I'm gonna talk about that. We really need that class. So most of the time, if it's about technology, okay, yeah, I need some time to explain. But for example, you could have articles about possible suggestions on what the future can hold. So technology, so new technologies, right? So in that case, you need to handle or deal with future tenses. These such cars, and instead of using will, maybe to show more grammar, I can say might bring a lot of problems, right? I can also work with that quantify. So I'm gonna talk about that grammar aspect of it. So the tenses, the quantifiers, the adverbs. Maybe here you could say that the use of such cars might actually or might unfortunately. So I'm going to give you those tips next class. But for now, this is what you need to know. In the introduction, you can give a bit of context. With the first sentence, they both discuss this. You need to state both claims. The reading claims this, and the professor claims that. In the transitional phrase, right? Both provide some arguments of support. While the professor objects the author's argument. So that's the basic structure, all right? You can also do it differently, but I'm going to talk about that next class. For now, we can leave it here. So is it okay, guys? Does it make sense? Do you have any questions about the introduction? I know it might not be so clear. We went through it a bit quickly. But please tell me if there's anything that you would like me to explain again, maybe. Any questions or comments or anything before we go? Okay, guys, so I think we're gonna have to wrap it up here. Don't worry, we'll continue next class. And before you go, don't forget the daily survey, please. I'll be seeing you all next week. Happy holidays, by the way. Hope you have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year's.
Thanks, teacher.
Thank you. Happy holidays. Bye.
Miss, sorry. By the way, the slides of the last class, you will send it at the final of the course or each class?
Yeah, I'm gonna be sending it at the end of each class. Now I'll send it. I'll send this presentation here and the previous one. So the speaking and this one.
Okay, Miss. Thank you. Have
Sure.
a good holiday.
Thank you, Madeline. You too.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, teacher.
Bye bye.